Ben that's talking, not me.
I don't know where to stand.
You just stand still and somebody wires you up.
I'm going to stand away as well. I don't know.
Keep moving.
Are
we on now?
Sorry? No, it's outrageous. They don't even pay. They don't even pay me either. I wouldn't mind if they gave me money, but they don't.
Where does rationality come from? Where does it stem from?
What?
Right.
We're rational agents, right? Where does rationality
First of all,
come
being a philosophically bent, we have to get our terms sorted out, and we have to agree what we mean by rationality. So let's go with that. What do you throw something in something?
The proper use of logic, making appropriate inferences from data.
Right.
Rationality, logic, right? That kind of rationality.
Do you think everybody has that? Do you think everybody is capable of doing that?
What, down here, biggest corner?
I
No.
would say that it's quite rare to find people who are, quote, rational. That is one of the big problems
But we have the
in our world.
capability, that's the point.
Well, yeah.
Where does that come from?
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
Oh, hard work, education.
No, even education gives you rationality. You have the capability in the first place.
I think the default human being has its, quote, own rationality, but it's driven by instincts. Sorry?
Do you believe we're rational?
No. I mean, if you think what you said, I think we're almost like cold logic, reason, and that sort of thing. That's definitely not what people are. How would you survive in the world with that?
I'm not saying we're just that, but we are certainly that.
I mean, have you heard of
How
this
distinguish
model?
animals to human beings apart from biology? You would say that we're rational, animals are not, right?
I don't know. A squirrel hides its nuts and then later on comes and finds that's fairly rational, isn't it? I think animals are fairly rational. They do things according to their own logic, which is evolutionary driven. They're probably not conscious of it.
I think most. I don't say the vast majority of people are rational in a fairly basic sense. For example, I'm at home. I can see out the window it's raining. I will need an umbrella, or I need to put on a coat, or they have the ability to judge a lie from a truth using what we call common sense rational criteria. Yeah. I think at that level there's a great deal of rationality around. Otherwise, we couldn't function in a society. We would be basically making big mistakes and just not being able to function. But people don't know. But we're looking at it in a too elevated way. If you look at it kind of a day-to-day level, like walking down Oxford Street, most people will know not to walk on the road such that they are.
Have you walked down Oxford Street?
You see, I know we're bringing humour to it. It's funny, but more seriously, people generally know not to walk in front of buses. Why? Because they'll get killed. And this is basic survival. But it's reason. You say, there's a bus coming, I judge, you know what I mean? At that level of common rationality, that is ubiquitous, apart from a very few people who are, for medical reasons or other reasons, are not functioning. But so I think rationality is universal at a basic level. Otherwise, a silent ask simply couldn't function. So I think you're right. But where I disagree with you, I think that rationality is an expression of the soul, and the soul is not reducible to the brain. The brain is a filter or medium through which our consciousness expresses itself, but the mind or the consciousness, the soul, exists separately from our material brain, and at death or at other times out-of-body experiences which happen. This shows that that dimension is actually the higher dimension which exists separately from the brain. So you're a materialist, that's why I make that point.
I'll put my materialist hat on because I'll never convince you that otherwise. So whatever I say,
but I think there's lots of empirical evidence now to suggest that's true. By the way, it's not just religious prejudice. There's a lot of evidence for that.
Right. I don't think we've had this conversation a few times, and I think one of the first conversations I had with you about 6 or 7 years ago.
He's rebuking me now. I've told you before, and you didn't pay any attention.
The same flipping evidence, does he? Anyway, never mind. We just go round and round in circles.
Well, you do. You go round in circles, yes. So no, seriously. There is actually a massive scientific empirical observation where people, for example, there's a fascinating cases, and in many cases, he's going to groan, or people have near.
To research it after you told me.
The people. Really wasn't much I can quote to you the peer-reviewed academic research. I can send you the links. I've read it now in reputable universities in the States. For example, the one thing I find very impressive, if people have so-called near-death experiences or even out-of-body experiences in very extreme conditions, who feel that they're unconscious, they're in a very, very extreme state, that their faculties have collapsed or whatever. They're not technically dead, but they're certainly not conscious and looking and observing around. and they have out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences, and they typically come out of the body and observe what's going on the ground beneath them. They can see what's going on. They can see and hear, observe, and accurately report. Once they're revived, they are able to accurately report what they have seen and heard to a doctor, a nurse, an onlooker. So that's commonplace. That's very well researched and observed. But there are cases, and this is my point, not what I've just said, this is my point, where people who've been born blind, who've never seen in their lives, have a near-death experience and observe what's happening around them. They see what's happened in detail. They're revived, and they're blind again because they're blind. And what they have described has been corroborated as completely accurate. Now, the doctors and nurses and others who have received this testimony, Joe Bloggs, who's blind, saw what was going on. When asked, did this person accurately describe what happened, they'll say, yes, they did, but we don't have an explanation for it. They're not offering metaphysical explanations. Right. So I actually looked into this, like you say you did, and there is actually academic research, University of Minnesota, by peer-reviewed academic articles by medical practitioners who examined this and looked at all the possible explanations for this phenomenon. People born blind in near-death experiences being able to observe accurately what is going on around them, whilst they're virtually dead, by the way, on this lab, and blind, not that makes a difference. I mean, anyway, they're virtually dead anyway. And
I'll go with the evidence.
No, and
you got my
let me tell you the research. They looked through all the possibility of fraud, of this and that, and they came to the conclusion. You read that, it's a very long article. It's very boring, and I read all the way through it, all the case studies and all the numbers of people and different research, and they interviewed people who've had the blah 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 blah, and they came to the conclusion that these phenomena are actually real. That they're not just gossip and hearsay, that there actually are people who are born blind who saw what was going on, and their reported observations were corroborated as completely accurate. Now, when I say, therefore, that the materialist explanation of the brain is unscientific now, it can't stand up to the empirical evidence, there is good peer-reviewed evidence to suggest that conclusion.
Yeah, well, if there is, then yeah, I'll go with it.
I'll email you the research. I'll email it to you if you want. Seriously, I'll email it to you.
All my three cheers for empirical evidence.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I've never asked you the key question about this, which has always been raised. Now, for some reason, I forgot to ask you. But if you're positing that there is
my apologies.
Goes to the machine.
Dualism.
Yeah. Dualism.
So it's kinds of substance.
No, I'm not talking about. Well, are you saying my position is dualism?
Everything's mind, isn't it? Oh, okay.
I'm an idealist.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm not a dualist.
Yeah, we have talked about this. Checkmate.
He's saying I'm a dualist in the sense of René Descartes, a Cartesian dualist. I'm not.
However,
I'm an idealist in the sense of Berkeley, actually in the sense of the Quran, but we won't go there.
I'll kick your shin and therefore refuse.
I have a question for you though. How do you explain rationality?
How do what?
Because if you're a materialist,
I thought you said, how do you spell it?
No,
yeah, how do you spell it? I have no idea.
From my understanding, from a materialistic, physicalistic point of view, rationality, as we know it, is inexplicable. Because according to and I'm assuming that you're going to be a naturalist, and we'll assume that you believe in Darwinian evolution, we should have instinct, we shouldn't have reason.
Ooh.
Because all that stuff when we do mathematics and quantum mechanics and poetry, that's surplus requirements.
Good point.
That's not required.
All we should be doing is count 3 saber-toothed tigers like max, and that's kind of all we need. But you're saying we can do quantum mechanics. I mean, whoa, this is way beyond what we need.
That's a fair point. It's an absolutely fair point, and it needs to be addressed.
Indeed, that's why we're asking you.
I think C.S. Lewis
Sorry?
this, didn't he? So,
you're quoting a Christian apologist? Gosh, I'm impressed. For an atheist, that's not bad. Keep going.
Based on the fact that we are constructed to deal with a world of saber-toothed tigers, how do you get from that to
quantum mechanics?
Fine.
Or mathematical physics?
I think my response to that is that there is something here which is much talked about but probably not very deeply understood, which is hierarchies of emergence, and I love doing that.
Emergent properties.
Hierarchies of emergence.
This is supposed to explain things, by the way.
In other words, I think one of the...
That's a little bit of magic.
It is.
Every time I do that, properties.
It's a bit Jordan Peterson.
This is materialist magic, by the way. If he does that, you think, ooh, it's magic.
What it is.
It doesn't explain anything.
It's to distract you from the fact I'm talking nonsense.
He's that's why I like Andy. He's so sweet sometimes. You don't destroy his arguments. He just destroys his own arguments. He's one of those self-refuting atheists. My favourite kind.
It's a sort of jiu-jitsu of arguing. You see, I get in a comfort zone and bang. Except the bang never comes.
Do you feel that earlier civilizations, say for example, near the Ice Age, 12,000, 13,000 years ago, do you think we have a differing in intelligence or IQ with those people?
That's a good one.
That's a good question.
I don't think intelligence. I think if you go back, I know a little bit about the sort of evolution of mankind according to the standard theory. I'm not going to sort of tread on anybody's
Standard
toes.
theory. I like that. Western materialism, you mean. Universalizing it for the whole world.
Probably about 70, 80,000 years ago, where you can see in the
That's when he was born, by the way.
I mean, there's a guy called Mithen, something like that, who wrote this fantastic book, and he put this idea that prior to about some crucial point about 70, 80,000 years ago, the hominids, who probably were early Homo sapiens and Homo erectus and Neanderthals, essentially have very compartmentalised brains. Now, that's a bit difficult. How the hell do you have a compartmentalised brain? Well, my analogy is, for example, anybody who drives knows this, or anybody who can do some task whilst doing something else. Now, I can drive and have a conversation like this, but I'll deal with all the problems coming along, but not subconsciously.
Multitasking.
Sorry?
Multitasking.
Yeah, it's what women do well and men do not so well.
Of these things that you're doing, and we all do this kind of thing. Now the theory is that early hominids actually had quite compartmentalised brains, so they have something for hunting, something for tool making, a bit for language, and a bit for social interaction. They didn't really meet, and there was something. It might have been some genetic switch or something about this period when you start seeing art. Art is a big thing.
That's the magic thing there, the genetic switch like that. Suddenly, the magic happens.
So there's a sudden blossoming.
Sudden blossoming.
And also wearing clothes that are decorative rather than purely functional. So you find skeletons, around this period, where suddenly you get beads, people covered in beads and ochre and that sort of thing. So they're using symbolic representation. So you get this sort of merging of functional clothing with the social interaction. They're sending messages to people through their clothing.
You read Sapiens, didn't you?
Sorry?
You read Sapiens, didn't you? The book
Is
Homo
that in there?
Sapiens.
Yeah, it probably is. It's an idea that's
exactly what you're saying. They're saying that.
So he's ripping off some other book, is he?
That amount of time.
I haven't read that book yet, actually. Is it worth reading?
The other question is, a lot
The
of
first
our
one's Hocus Pocus, the second part it gets to social integration terms. It's very useful in terms of sociology and stuff like that. So at the beginning it's just Hocus Pocus.
I thought it might be.
I don't know if you can. And the other metric is brain size. Well, actually, our brain sizes are shrinking, believe it or not, in the last few thousand years. They're shrinking. That might be because we're developing a sort of cultural consciousness. So we can store away information in books and libraries. We don't need to memorise the same amount of stuff. So we're kind of, it's a disadvantage compared with some of our Stone Age ancestors. You might say there was a peak of personal intelligence that might have been hit about 30 or 40,000 years ago, where people were multitask. They could do an awful lot of different things. You had to, because you didn't have a big
That's what he's saying. Back in the days they had it for survival.
With our ability to actually go to other civilizations or other cultures.
We don't know that assumptions. I disagree with that. I don't believe that.
I agree. You're right. There's a lot of assumptions going on here. There's a paradigm operating here to explain everything in certain understandings, and I disagree with that. I think there's evidence now suggests there's a very different paradigm we require.
I find it hard to believe that we are more
whole status stone man cave narrative.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you spend too long at Speaker's Corner, you can come away with theories like that. But
Evolutionary scientists, they never give the evidence in evolutionary science. They always give a narrative about it.
it's just those stories.
Yeah, that's so.
Just those stories. In accordance with certain presuppositions about how it must have happened, because we believe this about the world, therefore here is my just so story. There's an awful lot of assumptions going on in there, and that's my criticism of it.
They never actually explain it. They tell you why it's useful.
And he talks about the standard narrative, it's actually the standard Western narrative.
So basically what he observed was that individually, these people were smarter than
Who told you that? Some scientists.
They live in a hostile environment, they had to be.
That's why I know some philosophy of science is really helpful, because you just don't take a lot of this as a neutral objective. It's actually question the assumptions that are underpinning this particular methodology, and people should always state their assumptions before they say something. Well, my assumption is the universe is purely material, that there's no other dimensions, that the transcendent realm and faith doesn't exist, and therefore everything I'm now going to say will go through that matrix. That is my assumption. Now I will give you my argument and my evidence and my science.
You basically frame it.
You got it. That for me is good science because you're being honest about your assumptions. But a lot of science doesn't do that. It just jumps in and then he regurgitates it saying, well, the standard narrative. Well, no, hang on. Wait. Let's step back here. What are the assumptions that are framing this whole discussion? And this is not some kind of wacky idea. I mean, with the advent of quantum mechanics now, we know that the observer has a significant influence on the outcome of any experiments. You know, we're no longer just abstracted from the realities. We affect the outcome of the experiments we're doing, and that's been demonstrated numerous times in quantum mechanics. So we're inextricably connected to the science that we do as beings themselves. And, anyway, so but that goes exactly right. So that's why I really. Knowing some philosophy of science is really important if we're to grapple with these. Otherwise, we're just going to be victims to whatever presuppositions are being fed into what we're being presented as neutral or kind of value-free, and it's often not.
There is certainly at one point where you just put your hands up and say, but Allah knows best.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I learned this way as someone I know who's doing his PhD in physics at Oxford. I interviewed him on my channel. Brilliant guy. I hope he's going to come on again. And he says now, if he's doing his PhD in physics at Oxford, whenever you do a paper, you have to, and I'm just repeating what he said, to be honest, you have to state what your assumptions are. You just don't jump in there. You have to say, right, I'm coming at it from this certain, I'm assuming this model of the universe or this model of physics. And using that, I'm now going to talk about physics. And unless you do that, your paper's not accepted at Oxford. So I think that's brilliant science. So you're not just kind of pulling a fast one on something. Just accept what I say. No. This is my model. So, but there are other models. There are other models, not just that one. That's the implicit point there.
That's why science is fallible as well, because there's not a consistency in how to grade scientific research that people go through.
Yeah.
You set the intention from the beginning, and everyone were to do that, at least then it gives context to every study.
Yeah.
I think what science really does is it eliminates narratives. All it tells you is what is not true. Science never tells you what is true.
Good to see you again.
You go through, I go through, he's go through. All science can do is say Paul's theory is incorrect. And it approves our two theories. It's eliminative. It's like it gets rid of what does not fit the data.
Yeah.
But you can have multiple narratives, like you're saying. You can have multiple models explaining the same data, and it's just as exactly. And it's just as plausible as each other.
Yes.
So I don't think we should let him get away too honest. He's
a lovely guy. I love him to bits, but I've discussed this with him 1,000 times before, about 5 years. So I'm only kind of talking to him because you maybe have not met him, but he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
But we've debated this for years.
But he's already admitted to two contradictions in terms of materialism.
It's not difficult to run rings about him, bless him. But I mean, he's a very intelligent guy.
I just don't think he has a reason to be a materialist. Like based on what he said earlier on about that phenomenon.
You see, whatever he says, I just bring up the philosophy basically and saying, well, you're coming at it from this paradigm, and at that point, the whole thing starts to break down because he is, and I'm saying, well, I have this paradigm, and it explains these range of facts that your paradigm can't explain, and at that point, we kind of grind to a halt because.
Let's go round to halt.
We're just talking about you behind your back.
Your position
You're not getting away from us.
We're just talking about you behind your back. I'm just saying we've discussed these things many times over the years before, and how we had different paradigms and
I'll just say to Paul, I don't think you have the reason to be a materialist.
Sorry?
You're obviously a very intelligent person.
Oh, thank you.
You've been having conversations with this guy for many years, and for example, I usually bring up to atheists. How do you explain? You can't explain rationality. There's the argument usually.
You're a functional atheist.
But you see, like you're gonna bring up the point. There's the argument.
No reference to transcendent in anything you've ever said.
I think there is.
Oh, I missed it then. Would you care to remind me what I missed?
What do you mean by transcendent?
That's an absolutely valid question. It's the sort of thing that John Peterson would say. What do you mean by we and but and I and?
No, sorry, it sounds boring.
No, it's a valid.
You have to sort of pin the
because
these are arm waving words. And you can easily end up having different conversations because you have different understandings.
What I mean by that then, transcendent, is a non-materialist explanation that will involve, for example, spiritual explanations or divine explanations, or anything that's not just immanent cause and effect.
Right. I think, honestly, I think that the materialist reductionist account of human consciousness is lacking. And I'm convinced by that. For example, there's there's a couple of philosophers around who are not like you know, quotes religious or whatever you want to call yourself, thinkers or dualists. I know you're not dualists.
A dualist.
They I mean, shit, I forgot his name.
Who do you have in mind?
But
Anyway.
they make strong arguments. There's two of them, and if I prepared myself, I would have their names.
Well, next time,
Raymond Tallis. Raymond Tallis.
Okay.
Do you know him?
Not
I
personally.
think you might be interested, but he is a self-avowed atheist.
Right.
You can't. I mean, his argument is the presence of evil, and you would no doubt have good God. Actually,
Well, the presence of evil proves the existence of God, by the way.
Actually,
This one of the strongest arguments of the existence of God is the existence of evil.
Paul,
Seriously.
seriously, this man is a deep and serious thinker.
I don't doubt that. I'm
And
just
he
saying
might
the irony
propose
is.
himself on your show, if you want to debate.
Okay.
Or if you don't want.
No, I don't do
agree
debates
with
on
you.
my show.
All right,
on
somebody's
my
agree with you. But the point is that
Yeah.
he has written several books, and the general gist is that he argues that the reductionist account of consciousness cannot work.
no.
But he's not
So
saying
therefore
here's
materialism
here's
false.
the answer.
So therefore, materialism
Well,
false.
he's not saying that here's the answer. He's saying that here's the problem, and he's not great enough to give what the answer is. But he does say that he will, after thought, he does reject the notion of a mind-driven or spiritual-driven world.
Why?
Well, as I say, I mean, I think his argument against the existence of God is
What is this? Yeah, but evil proves the existence of
Well,
God.
I'm not going to defend his position.
No, but I mean,
you go in his.
the language of evil it suggests a metaphysical realm where there is good and evil. It's not a materialist explanation at all, and that fits in perfectly with a theistic or religious understanding. It does not fit in. You can't have moral evil in an atheist universe because there's no meaning. There's no transcendent reference. There is nothing. It's just brute material facts. So this language fits very perfectly in a religious understanding. If you're going to talk about evil, that actually leads to God, not the other way around.
Right, cold, blind, pitiless universe.
That's Thomas Hobbes.
Right.
Life is nasty, brutish, and short.
Nasty, brutish, and short.
I know that one too.
There's
but I'm
quite
not
a few
about that.
people
I'm
around
about-
Speaker's Corner who are
Richard
nasty,
Dawkins.
brutish, and short.
Yes, yes.
Now, Richard Dawkins
And that's just us.
said, when it asked for the problem of evil, he said this universe is full of blind, pitiless, indifferent, so on and so forth.
Yes,
Basically
without
saying there's
meaning.
no
But then he complains about, I don't believe in God because of the problem, because of evil. Hang on. You can't talk about a meaningless universe and then complain about evil,
Well, it's a
because
good point,
evil is
yeah,
a
because you need
significant
to come
moral, objective reality. And he's saying that's the reason I don't believe. It doesn't make any sense. You can't have your religious cake and eat it. You just can't do it.
So,
Yes.
I suppose my position, wavers between agnostic and atheist. So
Oh, there we go. It's agnostic, really.
agnostic Christian.
That's sweet.
I suppose.
He's moved a little bit towards agnosticism.
I'm going
He's
to argue strongly for religious practice and beliefs. I think no society can function properly without it. We see under communism.
But this is not This is pure Plato, isn't it?
This is
Plato's
the noble lie.
The noble lie in Plato's Republic. So
We mustn't talk about it.
So he's going to say
Stop
religion
talking
is
about
great.
it.
It might be completely false, but it's great because
I'm
it's
not
useful
saying
to keep
it's
people.
false.
Paul,
It's a lie. You said
saying
it's a lie. You said it's a lie.
I wouldn't.
You say it's
I wouldn't go
pragmatic.
there because I'm being agnostic. I say it's. But the point is.
But it's utility,
here are
social
these
utility.
Here are these claims about metaphysics, which, being metaphysics, we can never resolve. Literally, I was saying earlier to somebody.
We say we can't resolve them. What claims and why can't we resolve them?
When I first arrived at Speaker's Corner, I was gobsmacked because I thought the conversations that we're having between Christians, Muslims, and Jews and so on, you could have had a time machine and go back to Baghdad in Square in 850, and you'd hear exactly the same arguments.
It's very true. It's very true.
Have
It's
we
very true.
progressed? Is philosophy and theology?
Yes, we have,
something that
because the
progressed?
Muslim world, there are 2 billion Muslims on the planet. So
All right. Your metric is numbers, right? We're getting there. You're saying. But what I'm saying is intellectually progress. Have we? No. I say no.
I agree with you,
Just bracket that. Put it to one side. Everybody has their own opinion about the metaphysics of it, and I think the problem is that the reason why we haven't, quotes, progressed, and we never will, is that these questions are fundamentally unanswerable.
Why is he not a believer?
Except at an individual level. If you don't
understand
believe,
it?
you don't believe. I do not have the what do they call it? The sensus divinitatis. I don't have. Literally.
Divinus.
I can't remember who said that. But like we have sensus
Thomas
sight,
Aquinas.
hearing,
So you're quoting
and that sort
Catholic
of thing.
theologians to back up your to back up your agnosticism,
You're-
which is very ironic, given.
You're doing a bit of. It's not quite ad hominem, but it's sort of saying
No,
my
it is-
arguments are weak because I'm quoting.
It
people
is
I'm
ad hominem.
theoretically supposed to disagree with. No,
Yeah.
no. I'm
But the thing is, you make
take ideas from everywhere. And
Andy,
shouldn't we do that?
Andy, see the thing is, you're making my argument for me because usually I say this to atheist people.
I'm not in a argument for you.
You
We're
are.
having a discussion.
Let's see why. Well,
We're having a
I'm
discussion.
This is
I'd like
Speaker's
to see
Corner.
progress. Oh, sorry.
we can have an argument in the discussion, right? But the point I'm making
is this
is,
a 5-minute argument or the full
no,
half
I'll
hour?
make it short as I can. 5 years maybe.
That's a
you don't get
it's a
that.
Monty Python reference. You didn't get it. No, it had to be of a certain age, I suppose. It's a Monty Python. There's a sketch there where the guy comes in. Do you want to explain the scene, the Monty Python scene?
It's a little bit of parody. I don't know what it's a parody. But, I mean, Monty Python. Do you know what we're talking about? Monty
No idea.
Python? No.
I was born and raised in
Look it up on
Germany.
YouTube.
So a lot of the
Yeah, I
British.
know.
This guy's from Germany,
Yeah,
so
well,
not
I love
only
that.
they have
so
no
you're-
humour at
you're
all.
doubly-
No humour at all.
You're doubly deficient. So obviously, actually, no. Look at the Monty Python German sketch.
Oh, let's not go there. All right, so moving on quickly.
Anyway, moving on quickly.
Let me just say why I think you're making an
Sideways.
argument for me. Usually when I speak to atheist people, I'm not saying you're them, but usually the argument they make is, we're progressives, we're getting better every day, we're learning new things, we're becoming more moral, this and all that.
We
And
just said we're going backwards.
Yeah, we're an outside discussion. We've made an agreement.
but my argument you make me right now is, the human condition, the metaphysical questions have not changed. We was in Baghdad those days, right? The 800. So that shows that all of us are subject to the same questioning, to the same test. You see what I'm saying? So what you're saying is actually very.
divert from that. Yeah.
Mate, like you're saying you don't mind, but like you're saying the opposite of an atheist person.
Well, you've appointed me as an
The more the
atheist. I mean, I'm not. I
Okay,
keep
so you're not
saying
atheist,
till
so
I
you're
get blue
agnostic.
in the face. I
I
don't consider
apologise.
myself an atheist.
No, but I consider you an atheist.
no,
Whatever
I'm
you
only
consider.
quoting from Paul.
I think he's an
He's
atheist.
a theological expert. I just
No,
have
I'm
to
not.
take his word that I'm an
He's a
atheist.
functional atheist because all his arguments are material. They never
go
rise
with
above
whatever Paul
materialism. So it's like an atheist
What are you looking for?
functionality.
Pragmatism, or are you looking for truth?
Okay. Truth is a bit of a problem. Is that truth with a capital T?
Yeah, objective truth.
Right. Well, that is a problem.
Well, is it true that two
See,
and
there-
two? Is it
there-
true? Is analytical truth always true? Is it always true?
yes.
That two, well, there you go. There we go.
A married man.
No, it's just true.
bachelor is an unmarried
Is it
man.
true that 2 and 2 always equals 4? All
that's
all unmarried men are always bachelors, for example. Is this
They're
always true?
different things. So the analytical truth would
Yeah.
say
Mathematical truths.
all bachelors are unmarried.
Yeah.
You can't get around. Of course they are, because that's the
Implied.
two terms of the expression refer to. They're just different ways of saying the same thing.
Okay.
But if you say so and so is unmarried, that's a synthetic truth. You have to go and ask them and look at the documents.
Observe it,
It's empirical. Mathematical truths are rather interesting.
I know.
They're neither one talk
But they're
nor
a
other.
priori truths, that according to. I assert they are, because they are independent of our experience, but they're always true, regardless of the time of day or how we feel. It's always. I'll give you another example. It's always the case that a triangle has 3 sides, regardless of how you
Because
pull a triangle.
Is defined as.
Yeah, but this is an a priori truth. It's independent.
Triangle is that is
An analytical,
analytic.
not synthetic.
It's analytical.
Analytical truth.
Yeah.
But there are
You don't go
synthetic.
around look at all triangles
Exactly.
to check they have 3 sides.
So there are lots of things that are always necessarily true.
However.
These are necessarily true, independent of our experience and our opinions. And this is, you can say there's no truth, and these things are truths. And if you go along with Kant, of course, Kant believed there were synthetic a priori truths, the things that are truths of the world, but instant.
We've got the K word.
Like for example,
I know.
causality, space-time.
So we come into the world with these categories of perception.
These cognitive faculties that help.
And interestingly, that is actually supported by research into infants.
Yes.
They do come into the world with categories of
Yes.
perception. And if
yes.
Kant had only watched a baby, and
Well, how do you know he
looked-
didn't watch a baby?
Well, because they didn't. They were blokes. They were unmarried blokes who just spent the time drinking. And
How many Prussian men do you know from the 18th century, out of interest?
What kind of argument is this?
No, I mean, so you
say because I don't know any 18th century.
No, but you're saying
I can't
that.
assert that Kant. I think from what I know of Kant.
I don't think you've never ever met any.
semi-autistic guy
I'm pretty confident that you've never met any guys in the 18th century, from Prussia or anywhere else. Actually, I don't think you've met. No, but I've read a few of them, and Kant is one of them. I think.
And that's a priori truth.
But what he's saying is leads on to Islam very interesting, because the fitra, which is the inherent human nature we have, fits in with this. It's not just our cognitive faculties; it's our intuition about morality and justice and the existence of a creator independent of us. All this is hardwired into our species, and this is not just theology. This has been validated by research at Oxford a few years ago, which showed that the religious instinct is inherent in our species, and it's universal. Whether you go to secular Japan or you go to Britain or you go anywhere, babies instinctively know that there is a divine realm, and because the Oxford research has looked into this.
Oxford
I'll send you the link. I've done a YouTube video about it. I've actually done a program about it.
Well, let me acknowledge that one as well.
Well, this is academic research. It's been peer reviewed, and it's been it was cross-cultural. Doesn't matter if it's a secular religious society. So the point is, this fits in with
the natural theological understandings.
It fits in with the Quranic understanding, which talks about the fitra very naturally, and this has been validated by the most recent science. So we as a species naturally believe in God. We naturally believe in right and wrong. We actually believe in truth, and this is part of who we are. So being atheist is a lot of effort, because you have to deny your human condition. There's a natural instinct to believe in God and to worship him, and this is the tragedy of atheism. It goes against our natural order.
There's a few jumps going on there, because in three clauses you get from recognising the existence of a transcendent being bigger than us,
but it's a common
worshipping him. Or it.
Well, I say that is a joke. That is the inference that because we do.
Now, you don't necessarily. You could be a deist and say, okay, I'm quite satisfied that you can't account for the existence of order and in the universe and its mere existence without some sort of external to it, transcendence. Agent. Now, that doesn't lead at all to anything that lays down moral law that is interested in us, or
I think the moral law is within us to some extent. Babies seem to be acutely aware of injustice. If you take its rattle and give it to someone else, it's going to say, it's not fair. And it's not because they've been schooled into that. They have an instinctive sense of right and wrong.
This human species.
No, they may well do.
You see the appreciation of fairness with chimpanzees, for example. They will see when they've been diddled out of a.
But there may
that
may or may
explain it. Well, okay, I'll give you a
just so story.
Just so story. Like your just so story.
Touche.
If you can't point to actual, hard empirical evidence.
But I have. I mentioned a whole bunch of peer-reviewed articles, and I can send you the links for it. But
I can show you a peer-reviewed article that debunks the whole notion of peer review. It's nonsense. The nature of a lot of, I mean, this is something that's been.
Do you realise what you've just said? He can show me a peer-reviewed article to refute a peer-reviewed article idea. Do you realise what you've just said? You come out with a nonsense statement.
Yeah, I did it deliberately. I was teasing you.
Okay.
He fell for it.
But so you agree?
You were anyway.
So you agree that, like Paul's laying out right now, there are natural inclinations human beings have, right? We have innate ideas, like Kant was saying. You agree?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, that is peer-reviewed, definitely.
Okay, so why?
And evolution, by the way, cannot produce this.
Exactly.
How could Darwinian evolution produce these sophisticated faculties? Because what's this got to do with survival in the world? It has nothing to do with it at all. These are highly sophisticated technologies of the mind that we have, which suggest a much rather different etiology than his one.
If we unwind a bit, about 20 minutes, because that was coming up, that I was trying to give you my
just so story.
Appreciation.
Okay.
Oh, stop it! My just so story. It is literally, and I think it's something I've absorbed from various readings that I've done. But answering your question, where does rationality? And I said earlier that I don't think the normal state of being, apart from not walking into a hole, not walking into a bus, it's kind of not even rationality, it's just basic survival instinct. So let's discount that.
Wait.
But the thing about that, being able
basic survival instinct.
Sorry?
This phone here, basic survival instinct. No rationality, just basic survival instinct got us to iPhones.
Can I make a point?
Well, it depends if it's Apple or not. I mean, if it's, who made that particular thing? I mean, is it? Because if it's an iPhone, I would agree with you.
When the smartphone comes out in the hands of a god botherer, it's almost like the H word.
What's a god botherer?
Oh, we're going to have the argument in design again, aren't we?
It's a good argument from design, by the way. It's a very powerful argument.
I wish you'd bring out a stopwatch
Before I
or something.
really interrupt you,
according to Paley,
please continue before I really
Paley was
interrupt
right, by the way. The design in the universe.
That's another argument.
Have you looked at DNA recently? I mean, DNA is incredibly sophisticated.
Therefore God.
Therefore, in design, therefore design, and therefore a designer, therefore.
This is extraordinary. Therefore God.
No. The argument is designer. That's the argument. It's not difficult. Okay. Designer.
Design to this. You've made an assumption that design.
If you came across this in the field, would you say that's designed or not? Out of interest.
I don't come across. No, we're talking about an animal, a snail, a blade of grass, or something.
DNA is much more sophisticated than my iPhone. Therefore, it is obvious that a highly sophisticated, elaborate, engineered system has a engineer. It's not difficult.
Well, which you could. Oh, I see. You must. Anyway, that's another argument.
This doesn't aid us survival.
Into the bloody.
This doesn't aid us survival. I was taking a dig at him.
They're exchanging numbers.
Anyway.
No, I wanted to address this question.
Yes.
About.
What question?
I think it's an important
Rationality.
one.
Yeah.
So we're given a basic sort of. We have perhaps you could agree that evolution would give us the basic ability to survive in the real world. So that's running away from saber-toothed tigers, not walking in front of buses, basic survival. But the argument from C.S. Lewis and others is that that's not rationality. That's not the ability to make these huge steps in understanding the universe in considerable. Where on earth? Why would evolution give us the ability to understand gravity or electromagnetic
Of mathematical physics.
How? How the hell does that happen? Well, that's a very interesting question.
Yes.
I'd say it doesn't. Basic evolution doesn't. So that's what I was talking about earlier when we digressed onto something, the sort of hierarchy of emergence.
Emergent property.
Yeah, something like that. But you get, and the key thing about humans, when you think about it, which differentiates us from almost all other species, is our ability to form communities with language. Language is something that does emerge. All right, other species can communicate with barks and howls and that sort of thing. That's not really language. So language, out of nowhere almost, and if you like, this is a mystery. This is a transcendent mystery that's granted to us by God. We actually have this ability to grasp the past, the present, and the future in concepts and manipulate those concepts. Right, so that's the big thing, and communicate them with other people. So that opens up a whole new arena of conceptual thought, which is kind of removed from the drivers of basic survival evolution. Now you're onto a different level, and you can see how humans have transcended that basic evolution, and we're into this very scary world of creating the world out for ourselves.
I know your storyline. You're cheating.
Oh, that's a bit bold.
That's a very strong allegation, sir.
When you speak to I tell you why I say it's cheating, right? When you speak to, because who was it? John P said it nice. Atheists always like to have a bit of spirituality on the side. They always like to have a little bit of magic, a little bit, just give them one miracle, right?
Yeah.
What you're saying is, the same thing most people say about half-prop consciousness. It's emergent property. For example, there's no such thing as society, but when I come together, when you come together, we have this new property called society, right? And it comes together as people come together. This gives you the argument for emergent properties. But you haven't explained it. You're saying that's what happened, but and I could say that's fallacious reasoning. Yeah. It's a categorical fallacy to believe that. Yeah. To say he's stuck enough red blocks, eventually, at infinitum, we're going to get a blue block. That's what I'm basically saying. When you say emergent property, it's just the genie in a bottle. You rub it, and it just happened. And we don't know how it happened, but we know what happened. That's what he's basically saying.
It's very much like God did it. You don't explain your damn thing. God is introducing this concept of God.
Oh, good to see you, mate.
There's nothing about the mechanism of God.
Inshallah,
how does
take
God
care.
work? What's his internal mechanism? Oh, it's all mysterious. We can't go there.
Fair play, you got me there. I cannot explain how God brought it about.
There's a point where you bottom out, and there's a point where, sorry Paul, bottoming out, there's a point where...
I was apologising to me for, but
your
anyway.
view of the world, you reach bottom. And that's it. You know, there's an act of faith involved, if you like.
Yeah, we go admit it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's your religion, then.
Yeah.
If you like.
An act of faith.
Yeah.
Well.
I mean, so
honest,
this
like
is the best one can do. This is the best I can do as a partially educated Englishman of 2022 in comprehending
Partially
the world
educated
around me.
Englishman.
Sounds like comes straight Oxford.
And I tend to think that however much we strive, however much humanity strives, and hopefully we'll carry on doing it for billions of years, then there'll be some point where we just have to accept that that's it. We will never have a complete explanation of everything. If we did, then we would be the gods, which is probably blasphemous.
Yes.
But every belief system bottoms out or has to say something like there's a term which you will not go any further. God or emergence or...
So let me pick up on that. I agree with you. It comes down to an article of faith, right? I took the leap of faith and saying, God, right? This all makes sense. God explains it.
Yeah.
You're taking a leap of faith saying, materialism, or I don't know, right? What do you benefit out of it? I get afterlife out of it.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Listen to what I was saying.
We're both
all
taking
the way
leap of faith.
round. Oh.
Alaikum salam wa
I
rahmatullah.
mean, again, you know...
Inshallah, yeah, thank you. Bye-bye, salam.
So what I said earlier is that I will defend religion and the practice of religion.
But it's for its utilitarian functionality rather than you benefit. But rather than for the fact. No.
You want me to believe
No,
something
let me finish. Rather than it is true, and it's not a compliment to religion to say, well, we like your utility.
Okay.
All right, see you, mate.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Adnan.
Fair enough.
All right. You want people get cold? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, that's your problem if you don't feel complimented.
I'm saying
compliments?
if you think
saying
you're talking to religious believers and saying, well, we value your religion, but actually it's complete lies. But therefore, well, I really enjoy. You know, if it's a lie, if religion was a lie, I would want nothing to do with it. Doesn't matter if it's a religion or not.
I can't say it's lies because it makes claims that I can't verify or deny. Ultimately, you know, obviously, the spurious claims that some religions might make that are easily refutable or illogical. Or
there are lots of evidence for religion. The universe itself is evidence of God's existence.
Because each of those could be matched up against a counterclaim from the other side that puts another story against it. Until you get to the point where, on both sides, you reach something that's. You just have to accept.
No, I don't. Let me say I don't agree with that.
You see,
wait
a minute.
Okay.
Let me just add another point.
Please add on.
Which, again, being English, I'm profoundly disturbed by.
By what? I'm worried now. What are you profoundly disturbed by?
I'm just profoundly disturbed being English. No, I was going to say that how should I put this? Okay, I'll throw it out. When people claim absolute certainty over things that are to do with the way we organise ourselves, the structure of society, and all that sort of thing, where people claim certainty, I just hear the alarm bells ringing.
Do you often hear bells ringing in your head? Is this you have something you have regularly? Is it?
Yeah. Okay. So that's the point, and that's part of being English, maybe, because any country that's been through.
I think an essentialist notion of being English is because it's much more internally diverse being English than just having that point of view.
I agree, very internal. We don't need any more diversity. We're very diverse.
If I may respond to that,
all the diversity we need.
There are many things we take.
Newcastle.
There are many things we take for granted that we don't normally require proof for. For example, the existence of a universe independent of ourselves. The solipsism is false. That the idea that it's just me and my brain. This idea you had when you were kind of 10 years old. You think, oh, it's just me and my mind. No one else really exists. You can't really. That we operate on the assumption that is false. I operate on the assumption that you exist and you have a brain, etc. There's a whole range of assumptions we make about reality which we don't question and which everyone, be the atheist, agnostic or the most passionate believer, all accept as true. And I would say, and I believe this is the common experience of mankind, the reality of God, his existence, is one of those facts of existence of our lives that we don't normally question. It's axiomatic that we exist, the universe exists, God exists. It's not something that you have to arrive at by argument or provide evidence for, because I don't really have to provide evidence that he exists, or there's existence of reality beyond my mind, or that the universe exists. These are all axiomatic, self-evident truths of our existence. And the existence of God is one of those truths. Now, the atheists don't go along with that. They say, oh no, we're going to be skeptical, we're going to accept all these other things, rationality, the existence of other minds, the fact that we're not brains in a vat and we're just being manipulated by an evil genius. No, we'll accept that that's just a philosopher's game, but in fact I am real. There's a whole range of assumptions that atheists will not be skeptical about. But when it comes to God, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence, sir? What's your argument, sir? I'm thinking, hang on, your systematic skepticism here is very selective. There's a whole other bunch of stuff about reality that you will not apply. I don't mean you personally. You will not apply skepticism at all. And I'm saying that the belief in God is properly a foundational belief, along with all these others properly foundational beliefs that inform our epistemology and our metaphysics, that do not require proof. They are self-evident facts.
My alarm bells are ringing.
No, that's
like
because
crazy
you're an
now.
atheist. But you see,
No. You see, I really smell the burning of pyres with markers.
do you often
on
get
them.
bells ringing and smells happening
this
to you?
commitment
This
to
is
an
interesting.
absolute truth about cosmology, which you were expressing there. Sorry, Paul. I do feel. The little alarm bells going.
No, but you see, I would question why you do.
And you're denying anybody else's right, if you like.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that atheists, who are happily a diminishing number in the world, by the way, atheism is declining. It's not increasing globally.
It's not about numbers.
I'm saying that atheism is the problem because it is so out of sync with reality, so out of sync with those basic proper beliefs that we have precognitively, by which we understand reality at all, and that atheism is highly selective in what it doubts. Because atheists don't doubt the existence of other minds. They don't doubt that we are just brains in a vat being manipulated. They don't doubt solipsism. They don't doubt ordinarily the existence of the universe. All these things which we cannot prove. If I was to ask you now to prove I exist or the universe exists, right? How would you do that? How can you prove it exists? I mean, really prove to me. What evidence would you bring? And you can't just say, oh well, there you are. Because how can you prove it's not a projection of an evil genius who's manipulating your brains? How can you prove that? You can't. Right. How can you prove that solipsism is false? The idea that
we live in a matrix, it's a digital simulation.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that these are precognitive beliefs.
I've seen you for 5 years. I feel like you're searching for something. I've seen you 5 years coming in.
Basically, what he's saying is that the only thing he can be certain of is his uncertainty.
No, he questions anything. There are lots of things he takes for granted and will not question, but God he does question. But there's a many foundational beliefs that he accepts without question, but his skepticism is reserved for the existence of God.
Using the same principles to come to truth about other things, but he doesn't apply those same
Exactly.
principles.
He's been selectively skeptical, but he's not been consistent. If he was consistent, if he was really questioning these fundamentals, he'd apply it across the board, and skeptics don't. So what we're dealing here with a heart heart that's kind of twisted, and it's not really. And most people don't have this problem. Most people properly accept the existence of God and the existence of the world. All of these are properly basic beliefs that we don't question. But atheists selectively question one of those, and I'm saying you don't have grounds for doing that. I'm saying you don't have grounds.
When he was going to entertain the matrix theory,
I mean, this is the problem.
Yeah, but Matrix is one of
to entertain that as an idea, and potentially even a belief.
I respect the idea that he believes.
Just shows that he doesn't have any certainty when it comes to belief.
No, at all. Yeah.
I don't believe.
Anyway.
He's admitted to being agnostic, so he shifted the goalpost.
Yeah, but atheists do that. When they challenge, they shift to agnostic. Have you noticed? I always notice that. I mean, even Dawkins would shift agnosticism under challenge briefly and then snap back into atheism. It's when they're challenged, they say, oh, I don't really know. But hang on, 5 minutes ago, you're saying you do know that God doesn't exist. That's your knowledge. But of course, they can't prove that. There's no evidence.
And then you go back to when I was looking.
You say to an atheist, what's your evidence that God doesn't exist?
Good job, though. You made him embarrassed to an atheist. Like, how much
well, it wasn't the objective to make him feel embarrassed. That was your job, was it? No, I just wanted to point out that he was applying his skepticism inconsistently. There's an awful lot that he takes as real and foundational without any evidence, but when it comes to God, he demands the evidence. But no, the existence of God is also a foundational belief, like all these other things you believe that you don't require evidence for, which are fundamental to our existence. So why are you selectively applying your skepticism? I'm saying that it's unwarranted and that God's belief is properly foundational. And we don't need arguments for it. This is why many people who argue if it is a God, I'm thinking, well, that's not really the point, because arguments can be argued against, as he said, but the existence of God is properly foundational and we don't need to argue for it. And materialists who have a different philosophical paradigm have a different prejudice, and that's why they believe what they believe.
But I've got to give this, he's got good humour still. He always manages to keep joking, I like that by him.
Yes.
He keeps the conversation that hard.
Oh yeah, that's why I like him.
Is this just in the ether?
I wonder if I can take this off now.
Hey Paul, you know what?
I've got 2 of them.
Now, man.
You got what?
I think we're friends now, man. I think I spoke to you enough time.
I thought we always were.
Oh, man,
I don't think we're enemies.
Well, I want to ask you something still.
Oh yeah. Can I just give these back to away from the camera?
Destroy the Jews!
What the hell? Joseph is the Zionist. He always gets worked up at the end. He always gets hurt. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Your mic, you didn't put mic.
No, I will take something. The others, so